Look good to me. Look good to you.
Okay, I gotta.
All right, everybody. Look, just full transparency. This right here is Autumn's first attempt at this new um, interview style conversation that she wants us to start having. So this is gonna be our first go of it. She's gonna be a little rusty to start off, but I believe in her. I think that she's gonna do an amazing job. So I'm gonna show her some support. I know I got a whole lot of people following me in media. So anybody that has some encouragement for Autumn, definitely don't hesitate to share that, so that we can continue to uplift her as she builds up her platform and continues to have more interviews with more people. So let's get started.
Okay, so my name is Autumn Carter, and this is Let's Get Into Discussion. So I'm here with Ern Maven, and we're gonna have I have a few questions for him. So the first question is, what made you want to get into the NFL? Oh,
Into
how,
the NFL.
how did you get drafted into the NFL?
That's a long story, but I would tell I can tell the condensed version of it. So basically, growing up, I grew up here, West Baltimore. You know, you're familiar with, born and raised, all that good stuff. But during my time as a kid, you know, athletes were just always people that we looked up to. You know what I'm saying? Everybody had a favorite basketball player, a favorite football player, and you know, we would look at these guys as almost like our heroes, like our superheroes. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember growing up, Ray Lewis was like, you know, a god here in Baltimore to guys that were playing. And so many athletes, the Michael Jordans, the Allen Iversons, you know what I'm saying? I came up in that era. So I always used to see myself as an athlete as well, you know what I mean? And I thought that as I started to get a little bit older, when I was, you know, about Danny's age and a little bit older, like, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, people would say, oh, he's big, like he's strong, like he's gonna be an athlete, he's gonna be this, he's gonna be that. So you have enough people tell you that kind of stuff about yourself, eventually you'll start to not just believe them, but say, all right, like this might be possible. And, you know, that just became a goal of mine. You know, I fell in love with football at a young age. So I played all sports, but football was my favorite one. It was the one that I felt like I had a future in. So, yeah, like my career started and, you know, went from elementary to middle and high school, playing football, going to school, you know, training during the off season, and around the time that I got in high school, I started getting recruited by colleges. So, you know, around my sophomore or junior year, you know, I'm getting 20, 30, 40 scholarship offers. So these are schools all across the country now that want me to come and play football for them and are willing to pay me to go to school for free. You know what I mean? So I could, you know, use my skills. So ultimately, I chose to go to Penn State. While I was there, I became an All-American. So, you know, that makes you like one of the top like players in the country. And it was that year that I left school and entered into the NFL draft. So that was 2009. I got drafted by the Buffalo Bills.
Dang, that's cool.
Yeah.
So another question I have is, what made you want to do art?
Did you ever have anything that when you were a kid, like a really young kid, that you loved more than anything else?
Yeah.
What was that for you?
It was this one toy my mother bought me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a toy I had since I was a baby.
Right. So this toy was probably so important to you where like no matter where you were, no matter what you were doing, if somebody broke that toy out, you would probably stop running mid stride just to get that toy and go sit down and play with it, right?
Yeah.
That's how art was for me. So like when I was a kid, like, you know, 2, 3 or 3 years old, before I was even able to form words and speak, I was creating art. So I was drawing. My parents would keep like paint and watercolor around the house and stuff, so I would paint. And then once I got like big enough to move around, I would like sneak into the kitchen and steal a whole bunch of my mother's aluminum foil or Reynolds wrap, and I would start making like action figures, like toys. So I would make like my own superheroes. I would make like animals and things like that. And I was the kind of guy where I could, if I was creating something, I could literally sit down and do it for hours, right? So at a very young age, my parents saw that like the only time he actually sits down and focuses on anything is when he's playing sports or when he's creating. So they tried to put me in as many like art programs as possible to expose me to more of what they knew I was interested in. So from a very young age, I was always into sports and the arts. And like as I got older, my love for both grew. So when I was in middle school and high school, I was going to Maryland Institute College of the Art during the summertime to take classes. So I'm taking like college art classes with like college students, and I'm the only guy here in middle school. And like I did, so you see like the mural that we have on our wall out here that I painted.
Yeah.
I did a mural about I did a mural about 5 times that size downtown. You know what I mean? On the old Habitat for Humanities building when I was 11 years old. You know, so way before even people recognized me as a football player or athlete, I was an artist. You know, and art when I was younger wasn't like it is today. Like there are a lot of artists now that are celebrated today as being a great artist. Matter of fact, one of your teachers, Ernest Shaw, Baba Shaw, he's a world-renowned artist. He's famous all over the world for his art, right? But like, it wasn't something when I was a kid that people saw you doing art and said, "Oh, that's cool." It was like it was still corny to them, but it was dope that you had a skill that they didn't have. Now it's much more acceptable. It's much more of something that people celebrate you for. If you're a great dancer, or you're a great painter, or you're a great poet. So when I was a kid, like it was like you really had to love it because people weren't gonna pat you on your back when they found out you were dancing in the school play or acting in the school play or on the dance team or on the art going to art camp and things like that. So it was really something that I loved, and even when I got to college, it was one of my majors. So it was always something that I knew that once I got out of college, no matter how long I played football, at some point I'm gonna come back to being an artist, and that's like how I'm gonna live my life. So like from a very young age, I loved art.
Oh, so, okay, that's cool. I forgot my question.
No, that's cool.
So, who was your inspiration growing up, mostly? Or do you-
Artistically, it's a guy named Larry Poncho Brown. I always tell people that he's like my artistic father. You know, I have a really great father. His name is Michael. You know, he's a pastor. He used to be a firefighter. You know, he does a lot around the community to help people. So he's an amazing man. But my artistic mentor is also somebody that I consider to be my father because when I was really young, he taught me how to use art as a tool for self-expression. For example, my mother passed away when I was really young. I was 6 years old when my mom died, and she died giving birth to my sister, right? So it was tough. It was tough experiencing that because I hadn't really gotten comfortable expressing myself with words yet. So it was hard for me to tell people what I was going through in a way that made sense to them. You know what I mean? But art gave me an opportunity to do that because I couldn't tell somebody how I was feeling. But if I drew a picture, you know what I mean, of what was going on inside, people could relate to it. And then based off of that picture, people could understand a little bit more of like what I was dealing with. So art originally, that's what made me fall in love with it because it gave me a chance to share my story and talk about what I was going through in a way that I hadn't found a way to do with my mouth yet, you know. So after that, as my love of the craft grew and as my understanding that it wasn't just painting, but it's writing, it's poetry, it's music, it's all of these things, I started becoming obsessed with the idea of all of the stories that I could tell with my artwork. So that kind of started me along that path.
Okay, so I have a question. I'm just throwing this out there.
Hmm.
So I saw a post on Instagram of you when you were, I think you were up on Dorman, were you?
Hmm.
And as I go up there now, I see the art that's on top of it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was wondering, did you create that?
No, but actually a good friend of mine created that. His name is Demont Pender. I'll show you his Instagram, but it's called Demonte Picasso is his Instagram. But he's from DC, but he's actually a good friend of mine.
Okay, so here's a really good question. So I have some of your books here, right?
Hmm.
So I have a question. What made you want to start writing books?
That's a great question. Um, Reading for me was a journey. Until I was functionally illiterate until I was in the sixth grade. You know what that means? Illiterate. Illiterate pretty much means you can't read. It means that for whatever reason you struggle putting words together. And most of my teachers weren't able to teach me methods that worked for me. So my entire school career, I had never really finished a book all the way through. And this is all the way up until right before the sixth grade. So when I go into the sixth grade, that summer, my stepmother, this is after my mom passed away, and my stepmother had came into my life. She recognized my deficiency, but she also realized that I was a really smart kid, but for some reason I just wasn't putting words together correctly. And she was also an artist, so she knew how my mind worked a little bit better than most people. And she was actually, during that summer, she was able to teach me how to read. So I learned how to read that summer right before my sixth grade year. And I had never finished a full book before, but between that summer and the end of that next school year, I read every book that I could get my hands on. You know what I mean? Like, I became obsessed with reading, and during that time I met a woman that started giving me books that were written for me in my language. You know what I mean? So I know most of those books that you get in school, you might have those times where you haven't been given a book and you're like, yo, who talks like this? Or, these aren't stories that I'm familiar with. Like, I don't grow up in some country town, you know what I mean, with dirt roads and all of this kind of stuff. Like, none of this is relatable based on my experience. But when I had a woman that came into my life that gave me Black Boy by Richard Wright, that gave me Sister Soldier, Coldest Winter Ever, that gave me James Baldwin's books, gave me Fire Next Time, and so many others. Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni. These were authors. Walter Dean Myers was another one. These were authors that I was getting exposed to that actually wrote in our language that we use in our communities, that actually were writing stories that spoke to me and showed me things about my life that I hadn't seen yet, and people around me's lives that I hadn't been exposed to yet. And I fell in love with the Black narrative, with the Black aesthetic, like with Black storytelling, Black music, Black art. That I became obsessed with the style and the flair with which we tell our stories. You know what I mean? And then I started writing my own poetry. You know what I mean? Like, I'm reading Nikki Giovanni, and I'm reading Langston Hughes, and I'm reading Amiri Baraka. And then finally, I'm putting pen to paper and writing my own poems when not even a year ago, I couldn't even finish a book. So I had been deprived of reading for so long that I felt like I was playing catch up. So, like, since that point, like, anytime you come into this building, if I'm not helping somebody with homework or outside with people, what am I usually doing?
Reading.
Exactly. Why do you think that is?
I I actually don't know, but my I think because you like reading.
I do love it. Hold up 1 second. I need you to close the door. You can't be coming in and out. Thank you. I do love reading. Close the door. I do love reading, and I want you to understand that I do, but I'm not always reading out of necessity because I love it. I feel like you ever heard of sharpening a sword?
Like,
You ever seen people like one of those old war movies where a person has a sword out and they're taking like a hard object to it? So that's called, the hard object is called a whetstone. In my mind, our minds are the sword and the whetstone is books. And if we're going to keep our sword sharp, the mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone. You know what I mean? So in my mind, I'm trying to learn as much about the world as I can. And you only learn about the world from one of a few things, either being in it and experiencing things, building things yourself and learning as you go, or getting with somebody that has done some living and achieved some things and learning how they did it, or reading about how they did it. You know what I mean? And even when you're understanding yourself, sometimes you have to read about somebody else's experiences for you to understand what you're going through. So when I'm reading, that's what I'm doing. And just as this is probably me getting a little bit deep, but I know that you'll understand me. It was once illegal in this country for black people to read. You know what I mean? If they caught black people reading, they would put them to death on the spot. If they caught black people teaching each other how to read, they would put them to death. Why do you think that was?
because they didn't want us to learn about the world. They didn't want us to learn anything. They just wanted us to stay dumb.
Exactly. So if that's the case, if people do want to see folks that looks like us dumb, the only way it becomes impossible for somebody to become a slave is when they're educated. You know what I mean? Once a person knows enough, not just about themselves, but about the world, and about how even when our people were enslaved, it was because the country was dependent upon the free labor and products and resources that we created. You know what I mean? We literally built this country for free, and our ancestors and everybody within that line between them and us have never been repaid for that. And in spite of the fact that we've never been repaid, and in spite of the fact that for so long it was illegal for us to read and to learn, even once it became legal, every obstacle has been set up in the pathway between black people and being fully educated. You know what I mean? We've never had equal schools. We've never had equal opportunities. We've never had equal resources. So with that being the case, it's super important for every single one of us to be a reader. And not just be able to read, but to like engage with books every day, to engage with literature every day, to read about what's going on in the world around us. So we should know what's happening politically. We should know what's happening socially. We should know what's happening in our community, because the only way we actually make it better is when we're informed about these things and we know what the solutions to the problems are. So like that was why reading became so important. But once I got out of college, and started making and selling art commercially, even during my NFL career, I realized that I had so many stories that I needed to tell because I didn't see those books out there. You know what I mean? I didn't see art activism out there. There was no book that talked about how you use art as a tool to create change. You know what I mean? Like getting on code wasn't out there. You know, there wasn't a book that talked about the type of code we need to be abiding by when dealing with each other, you know? So it's like, I'm one of those people where when you look around and you see something doesn't exist, it's because you're supposed to create it. It's because God's given you the vision to create it and not somebody else. So like, once I realized that, it's like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to write this book. Yo, you so funny, yo. I think she's doing a good job though, ain't she, y'all? I can't wait to check the comments out. I think they're gonna be really proud of how good. This is the first time she's ever done this, so it's dope. Keep going.
So I'm just throwing this out here.
Uh-huh.
So when you were talking, some things that reminded me of is when Baba Shaw was teaching us. He would say most black activists we know now, when they were younger, they tried to read all the books in the library.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were talking about when you was able to read and you read all the books that like you were able to.
Yeah.
That just
And it's not even just the books that I've read. Like, why do you think that I'm building a library in here for y'all? You know what I'm saying? Like if you go into the back rooms, like, yo, there's more books in here than most schools have, like, in their library. Like, with the kind of books that we need to be reading. You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't no Huckleberry Finns back there. Ain't no, you know what I mean? Like there's enough spaces that are going to force you to engage with books that aren't a part of your history or culture. But in most of those same spaces, they're not going to have the books that we have there. They don't want you to read about the African leaders, you know, that we descend from. They don't want you to read about the global colonialism that we're fighting against here in America. You know what I mean? How that's tied to what's going on in England and what's going on in Europe and what's going on in Africa and India. All of this stuff is connected, but we don't recognize that if we don't arm ourselves with the knowledge. So, like, yes, I'm becoming that old guy that's always going around asking kids about what they're reading and telling them that they need to be, you know, having more books in their hands. But it's like, as I get older, I realize how important that guy was, because I needed to hear that at that time. You know, like, I'm so thankful that there were people in my life that forced me to read until I fell in love with it. You know, because, like, once I realized how beautiful language is, and when I realized that even during enslavement, right? Do you know how much of that was tied to language? You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't even call black people people. You know, they called them chattel. You know, cattle, basically, not a child, but a piece of cattle. You know, like, because if you call a person 3/5 a human being, and you say that scientifically that's what this person is, that's 3/5 of a human being, that's not a human being, then now you're comfortable with the fact that I don't treat him like a human being. You know what I mean? Now you're comfortable with the fact that I treat him like an animal. And because this has been done to us for so long, we don't even recognize when we get to the point where we start doing it to ourselves. So when we start talking about each other in those derogatory, like, senses, like, even if me and you start arguing, right? Well, you're the kid, I'm an adult. But if me and another adult start arguing, especially another black person, like, no matter how heated the argument gets, I'm not stooping to the level of insulting them. You know what I mean? Or belittling them, or because that's not us. Even if I disagree with you, you still are more than that. And just because I disagree with you doesn't mean that now I should be able to invalidate your existence, so to speak.
That's why I'm glad we got those amendments.
Yeah, I mean, but even in those amendments, so even in, like, the 13th Amendment, you know how, like, there's, like, fine print? So, like, everybody pays attention to, like, the big print in the 13th Amendment. But when you look and you say, all right, if you commit a crime, essentially none of the stuff in the beginning of this amendment matters, because they can throw you in jail, and then they can take advantage of, you know what I mean, this free labor the same way that they were doing in slavery. These big corporations that are invested in the prison industrial complex, they're going to keep making money. You know what I mean? So it's like it's so much more that needs to be done, and we can't do it if we're not informed. We can't do it if we don't know what's happened and how that ties into what's going to happen in the future. Like, have you ever heard that saying, like, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it?
That was my first time hearing it, but it's like, when you said like that, now it's something like I would go back and tell my mother, and then it would get more in depth.
Yeah, because I'm sure your mother has heard that, and then she has experiences with that saying as well. There's plenty of things that she can probably look in her life and say, oh, if I had known this, I wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? If I had known this was going to cause this, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. It's easy to do that as an adult. But what I try to get y'all to understand is, even as kids, we got to start looking at ourselves with that kind of responsibility, because it happens fast. You know what I mean? You go from being a kid to an old person very quickly when you look back in hindsight. And a lot of times we're not paying attention to that in the here and now. We just recognize it when life's passed you by. But, like, while everything's still ahead of you, that's when you need to be preparing yourself. That's when you need to be doing your reading, your studying, your preparing in all aspects of life. Because life comes at you fast, because at a certain point, somebody just tells you you're an adult. You know what I mean? Nobody's walking you through nobody's walking you through how to pay your taxes. Nobody's walking you through how to take care of a family. Nobody's walking you through how to be in good relationships and all of that. If anything, people are giving you examples of the opposite. People are showing you how to have toxic relationships. People are showing you how to, like, you know what I mean? How to not maintain friendships with people. People are showing you all of those things because that's what folks do now. If I were to go outside right now and make a video of myself acting like an idiot, it would get hella attention. You know what I mean? It would go viral. But like us having this conversation, it's gonna get some traction, but it's not gonna be. Hold on one second. What's up?
I'm about to go to the bathroom.
You had to come in here. You had to come in here to tell me.
But I wanted to let you know
need to go to the
if you
bathroom.
come out, you be like, where they at?
So hold up, how long you gonna be gone? It's gonna be one of them type of bathroom trips, huh?
Like 10
Matter of fact, we on live. You on one.
Hey, you gotta go.
I got you. I'll keep an eye on everything.
That was fun.
It was.
Okay, let's get on code.
I like the way you said that though. That's a good. I'm gonna have to get you to do that again. That's gonna be a plug.
I got you. So, you gave me a copy of this book right here, Getting on Code.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you read?
yes, remember
Yeah.
we read some
Yeah,
right
we
there,
read
and
some,
I read some at night.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like the way that this book is like organized because it's not all one chapter. It's like different chapters with different stories.
Yeah, I try to break it up so that you can, like, if you just want to read one chapter and then sit with that for a little bit, you can. And then if you want to read multiple chapters and then come back to certain ones to have like conversations about them, you can. But like the thing I wanted the most from that book is I just wanted people to read it, and I wanted it to cause them to go back and have conversations with people so they can start to figure out what their code is. Like, what's one thing that I can do to make sure that I'm being a part of the progress in my community, you know? So I love the fact that you've read it. I love the fact that, like, kids your age are engaging with it, and it's something that, like, I'm loving that adults are able to engage with too, because I think that we all need to be a part of that, like, conversation. You know what I'm saying? You even see me pulling up on y'all about different things day to day, like, yo, why are y'all talking to each other like that? Like, why is this what? And I know it's not the cool thing to do. I know that I'm officially the old guy going around telling people how they should be, how they should be acting better, how they should be. But I feel like you need OGs like that around. You need people that love and care about you, that are gonna tell you the things that they feel like will help. You know, and we're not always gonna get it right. You know, all of my OGs and elders didn't get it right when I was younger, but the love was there. You know, the desire to see us do better than they did was there, and that's something that, like, I don't know. I just feel like the youth are always having people talk down on them, tell them what they're not doing, tell them like what they're getting wrong, but not a lot of those same people are going around showing them how to do better. You know what I mean? Like, telling them how they can, you know, make what's wrong right. And that's what I'm trying to do. I ain't trying to be somebody that's always going around preaching at people. Like, I want to be giving you real information and resources that you can use to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Mm-hmm. So if at the point that you leave away from here, that you're no longer going to the school, that you're no longer coming here, you can go off and with some of the things that I've taught, with some of the things that Tori has shown you, Chanel, with the things that we've brought here, if that can impact you in a positive way and you can be successful in life, I could never see you again and be happy about it. You know what I mean? Because I did my job. You know what I mean? Like, the job is like, yo, if the wreck wasn't here, where would y'all be right now?
I actually have no idea. If you want to be honest, I probably would be outside. But as the students that's in my school, I'm not like justifying anybody, but the black young men that I have in my school, the way that they talk is crazy. Like, one kid.
You know the way that y'all talk is crazy too, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the boys. Like y'all are wild.
But you have to listen to what he said. Alright, so he said he wasn't even going to come to school today. He was ready to go be on that corner.
Mm-hmm. But that's what I'm saying. So like, my whole thing is like, I can't pull up on every corner and drag a kid off the corner. But what I can do and say, kids need a safe place where they can come, that they can just be. Whether it's playing sports, whether it's coming inside and doing their homework, whether it's getting tutoring, whether it's getting help with school or anything else, or whether it's just something like this. You saying, yo, I want to do this podcast thing. Like, all right, like I've done podcasts. I can show you how to do it. Like, I can help you conceptualize an idea, and we can get you some like experience in front of the camera. But like, they need to have places where they can just do that. You know what I mean? Like, everything doesn't have to be built around sports. Everything doesn't have to be built around education. It needs to be a blend of all of those things. So my whole thing is, all right, let's just have a place where we have all of these resources here, and let's make sure our kids have a place to come. You know what I mean? Like, at bare minimum, that should be it. Now, if they also need help at school, if they also need, you know what I mean, like resources, if they also need different things, we can get those for them. But at bare minimum, they need a space where they can go, where they can just be kids. And they can be around adults that care about them, you know what I mean, are going to keep them safe, but also are going to be sowing good seeds into them. You know what I mean? In my mind, that's what this is right now. Even before me and you started doing this, when the boys came in and were asking me about that show that they want to do, it's like, yo, that's dope. I love the fact that y'all are coming up with these ideas for things that can make you money. Now let me help you create it. Let me help you create the blueprint, and let me help you get started. Because I don't want anything from any of y'all except for y'all to come back one day and be like, yo, Mr. Maven, this thing that you helped me do, or this idea that you gave me, look at how I've created a job out of it. Look at how I've created success for myself and my family out of it. That's the real reason that you do this kind of stuff. And hopefully, because y'all had this, you know what I mean, when y'all do get in that position, there's something in you that feels like, all right, let me go back and help some kids the way that they helped us. You know what I'm saying? Let me go back and provide some of these things for the kids that would have been me, you know, as you get older. So like, that's the whole thing. It was like, I went to Unseld School right around the corner, you know, when I was a kid. And it was people that cared about me in a way where, you know, Poncho, he did stuff like this. My mentor, who I just told you about, like, my father would just drop me off at his studio after school or whenever and just be like, hey, I'll come back to get him whenever. But that was important, you know what I mean? And without that, without his influence, I can't say that I would be doing the exact same thing that I'm doing today.
So, when we read the book together, we read this page right here. I remember. Page 49.
About relationships, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, it was really interesting. Like, at first, my mind is set to where I don't want to, like, I don't like reading.
Mm-hmm.
But after, like, the second page or something,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it's just like, oh, this is starting to get interesting.
Yeah.
So, when I got home, it was just like, I want that feeling again.
Yeah.
And I want to, like.
But that's the feeling that I was feeling when I fell in love with reading. You know what I mean? It's like, oh man, like, I get that this is like a book, but if this was a person having this conversation with me, I would want to sit here all day and talk to this person.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I have a book that accomplishes that, I don't want to put it down. So that's what I want my books to be for people, because like, you ever read certain books? We'll be out in a minute. You ever read certain books where you realize like, yeah, this person went to a lot of school, but most of this stuff is going right over my head. Like, I don't think he wrote this for me. Like, I don't want people to feel like that when they read my books. I want them to feel like, oh, okay, he must listen to the type of music I listen to because he talking my language. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think too many times when you read books, you can tell that the author was writing for the people that are in college or the people that are like professionals. Not too many people are reading for the people that are still in the hood. You know what I mean? For lack of better terms. Like, And I want those to be the people that are reading my books. So yeah, and that was why we read that book. I mean, that chapter, because it's like when people hear relationships, usually they think like boyfriend, girlfriend. But black relationships is about just that, black relationships, like all of us. So that's your friendships, your partnerships, your marriages, all of it. There should be a code that we abide by in all of those things. What does that code center around? You know, it centers around love. You know, it centers around support. It centers around understanding. So in that chapter, I wanted to talk about these things in a way that like was real for people. Because you see a lot of folks like just arguing right now. You don't really see too many of us talking to each other. Like, and if we are talking, like, the question is, it's like, yo, do y'all like each other at all? Like, is there any love here? Like, it's like, and that's my thing. It's like, whether you're talking about your teachers, whether you're talking about your parents, whether you're talking about clergy members at your church, coaches, or, you know, I know you in the band and stuff, so your band instructors, like, you should be able to tell that all of these people have love for you. If you can't, then why are we listening? You know what I mean? Why am I listening to these people? So that's like, in my mind, a basic standard that we have to have, like, amongst all of us. And yes, we as adults have to do a better job of modeling that for y'all. But in my mind, it's like, yo, some of the adults even are too far gone. Like, they don't know how to have healthy relationships. So let's get y'all in the mindset of valuing yourselves and valuing your peers, just off the base fact that we are people. You know what I'm saying? These are our people. Like, whether I agree or disagree, we got to be able to cohabitate with one another. We got to be able to build community together. And what does that look like? Because even at a young age, like, y'all are going to get older. And these same people that are the annoying peers in class are going to become the people that you have to build community with. So, you know, let's carry ourselves and live and act like it when we're just walking around in our day-to-day lives.
True, but the black community it's starting to get a little bit better, like school-wise, because in my school we have a black history class only. Like, we have a history class,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have a black history class only for black history. So it's getting better.
It's getting better. But then you also have to realize it's getting better here. But even that class that you have, if we were in Florida, that class couldn't be taught. If we were in Texas, that class couldn't be taught. And if we allow the people on the other side of that discussion to have their way, in a couple years, you won't have that Black American Studies class in your school either. That's why politics connects with, because that's actually probably one of the few classes that you actually like really are keyed in for, right? Because it's important. Like, you got to think, how many kids aren't even getting this basic understanding of our condition? You know what I mean? And even if it's just for us, how are we ever going to overcome and move past our condition if we don't know how we got here? You know what I mean? So that's why it's really important. Like, no matter how far away from that conversation I go, I always bring it back to, we need to be arming ourselves with knowledge and information.
Yeah. So, like, 2 more questions.
Okay.
So, of this page, actually the whole book, what made you want to write this?
What made me want to write it was when I looked around at the conversation about improving the black community, not just here in Baltimore, but all over the country. You hear people just talking about problems without talking about solutions. Every single time somebody brings up Chicago, every time somebody brings up Baltimore, every time somebody brings up Detroit, you're talking about violence, you're talking about murders, you're talking about drug abuse, you're talking about intercommunal violence, but we're not talking about the root causes of any of these things. When people are making money and they're in loving households with families that they support and care about, they're not going out robbing people. They're not, you know what I'm saying, doing drugs. They're not doing all of these things. Like, all the drugs, the violence, the crime is all a byproduct of the struggle. It's a byproduct of the joblessness, the homelessness, the poverty, the lack of people owning houses, not just not just being housed, not just being a renter at an apartment, but owning your own home. In the communities where you see a lot of that, in the communities where people own their own homes, where people are making good money, where people can take care of their kids and their families, those are the communities with low crime. But whenever they talk about our community, they talk about the crime, but they don't talk about any of those other things. So it was important for me to write that book because the only way I see us but implementing the solutions is if we within these communities focus on those solutions ourselves. Because the politicians aren't going to do it. And the answer is not going to fall out from, an angel's not going to fly down from heaven and drop it off to us. And we don't need these benevolent white people that are coming into our cities, gentrifying it to try to come up with a solution for us, because that solution is going to end up with us getting displaced and them taking over our communities. So at the end of the day, we have a responsibility as black people that live here to abide by a certain code when we deal with each other, to live our lives a certain way that improves our surroundings, and that we're raising families of whole kids that are mentally, emotionally, and psychologically whole, rather than broken. Like Frederick Douglass, you know who Frederick Douglass is, right? He has an amazing quote that I always state. It's easier to build strong boys than to repair broken men. And I feel like that's not just with boys, that's with girls. It's easier to build up strong girls than to repair broken women. But if from a young age we're not learning how to process our emotions, learning how to have healthy conversations, learning how to disagree without being violently disagreeable, learning how to practice group economics, learning and valuing the importance in our education, then we're not going to get any of the things that we're saying that we need as a community. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, this is the question, but this is for you guys. So, I'm just saying, you guys definitely should get him cool, because look at this. He got coloring books.
I ain't asked her to do no plugs, but I appreciate this part right here. Go ahead.
Fill in the blanks, like, and if you're not too much of a word person, look at this book right here. Hold on. You see all the pictures with it got the words with the pictures, just in case you guys are more photographic. You know? But here's my question though. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So you say you from West, right?
Uh-huh.
So do you know how to hit the avenue? Do you know how to hit that bird flu?
Oh my God.
Like, I can get up and show you, but like, do you know how to do it?
I know how to do all of these things, but what we're not about to do is turn this into a TikTok. All right? That'll be a different video for a different time. But I'm gonna tell you what though, no lie, this was actually a very, very, very great interview that you did.
Thank you.
You did an awesome job. So what I'm gonna be interested in doing, because I know I went live, but I wanna see how you can chop up this footage that I'm gonna give you and put it together into some reels and stuff like that you can post.
Oh, I got some good ones already.
Yeah, so I'll help you figure that part out. For anybody else that was watching that has affirmations, that has input, that's got comments, questions, anything like that, I think that you can add them to the comments on the live. I'll check them before I sign off, but you can also DM them to me, because again, I've told her that I'm gonna help her build out this YouTube page that she wants to do these type of interviews on. I think that they could definitely be an amazing collection of conversations, especially from a young lady that has her whole life ahead of her that can actually build up a brand in this business. I really want to find a way to continue to allow the village to support not just Autumn, but all of our kids. So those of you that stayed this long, thank you. I appreciate the time. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you were here with us. We appreciate that. What you want to say, Autumn?
And if you guys want to watch the YouTube video, like if you want to replay it and watch the funny parts, then I'm about to make this YouTube channel. It's called Let's Get to Discussion. So you guys can check it out on YouTube. And I don't know if he's going to do it, but he might put a link on his story to my YouTube.
I'll put a link on the story. I'll drop that in my head. Peace, love, and hair grease, y'all.
I like that. that.
There you go. There you go.
How long was this? 45 minutes.
Hold up.
This was a fun topic.
Hmm?
This was a fun topic.
Yeah, it was dope. Now let me see. Did it not?
If you go in there, oh, did it not record? Maybe your internet bad right now. If I
But I got the video either way, so we can just make it as a what's the name?
can I sign in on the computer? What,
Yeah.
What would they do? And try to go to iMovie?
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna need your help though. Oh, I forgot my stuff. Look at me. I'm a podcaster now. Who knows? Maybe I'll be podcasting rappers next.
Who knows?
Oh, I can though. I could do President Davo.
Yeah, I know Dave-O.
Cause he's in the city. Well, he don't live here no more, but he lived with my director
Mm-hmm.
when he visit Baltimore. He go to her house.